Seth Kaplan is here with us, Airline Weekly's managing director. Seth, good to see you again. This situation with Ebola, it seems to have calmed down significantly since the last time that we spoke. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, at least in terms of airlines outside the affected region, little by little, everybody sort of feels like they know what they're dealing with at least. And people are still traveling. Obviously, a lot of impact beyond the human tragedy in the specific region. But as you get farther from there, business more or less goes on as normal in the aviation industry, aside from obviously the precautions that we heard about just a few moments ago.
Here's what we know. There are a number of airports that are being discussed about possibly expanding to five current airports. The administration has not done that. For our audience, there are 5 airports that folks from those Ebola areas can arrive into the U.S. where there will be a secondary screening, if you will, when they get off the plane. I guess the question is it enough? And I'll preface this by saying my understanding there's only between 100 and 200 individuals arriving each day from those areas.
Right, and that's what's helpful in terms of the impact, certainly in the United States. We're talking about a minuscule percentage of the overall air traffic into the country, which is why with merely 5 airports, you can capture the vast majority of those people and inconvenience a few of the ones who might have entered through a different gateway, say, for example, somebody connecting instead in Paris and flying directly from there to another airport not among those 5. That person now would have to fly to one of those airports in New York, Washington, Chicago, Atlanta. But as those people, I mean, we're talking literally maybe a couple dozen a day among the couple hundred who come to the U.S. in general.
Look, I won't say which network, but a short time ago, that nurse that went on that Frontier flight, that made headlines across the United States. And there was a lot of, I won't say panic, but some serious concern about the sort of cleanliness of aircraft and if they're really capable of tracking people down who are on it. Now, I know they're still looking for some individuals. They've still got names and they've got lists, but it seems like that's calmed down. The question to you is, as a passenger, if I'm flying on a plane, do I have anything to worry about at this point?
Of course, Phil, I'm an airline expert, not an infectious disease expert, but, sort of taking a cue from the people who know a lot more about the disease itself than I do and knowing what the airlines are doing. Absolutely. And in fact, rather impressive that U.S. travelers really seem to be taking this well. Airlines, as they've begun coincidentally reporting their quarterly earnings during the past week, an opportunity for analysts and journalists to ask them, has there been any impact? And they've said absolutely not in terms of domestic travel. Obviously, a lot of impact in terms of travel to the Ebola-stricken regions. Delta, in fact, reported earnings several days ago. Delta, by the way, the only U.S. carrier that actually had flights to that region a few times a week. One of the flights from New York to Accra in Ghana continued on to Monrovia in Liberia. So for them, a little more direct impact, but again, even that, a tiny percentage of what a giant airline does.
This is something I was going to ask you kind of on the phone, but I'll do it right now on live television. That is, if you're sick and you're getting on a plane, you've got a fever, whether it's Ebola or any other disease or sickness you have, should you really be on that plane? I mean, should we be letting people who are sick on planes?
It really is a judgment call, isn't it, Phil? And it's a good question. Asking people to police themselves. Now, that nurse, it's been, for example, who took that Frontier flight from Cleveland, been pretty widely acknowledged now that she shouldn't have been on that plane. But the rest of us, yeah, you have a cold, then it's communicable, and you know what? On an airplane, it's a little more easy to catch something than at other times. You kind of have to rely on people, and quite frankly, I think all of us have at one time gotten on a plane when we've, sneezed sometime in the past hour or two before that. And you just have to use good judgment, and it's really hard to know where to draw the line. Certainly, anybody who's in a situation where they, absent the fact that they're traveling, should be seeing a doctor, well, they should be seeing a doctor, not getting on that plane.
If you need to be seeing a doctor, I don't think you should be sitting in the aisle seat next to me, which I'll be in the middle row, of course.
Exactly, Phil.
Seth, I only have another minute here, but I want to talk about the long-term implications of this. I mean, we've got the short-term implications. It doesn't seem like it's so bad, whether it's on earnings or travel or capacity on airplanes. The airlines, they're fine. longer term, as you look towards next year, if this situation remains the way it is right now, not significantly worse, but not significantly better, would there be a longer term impact?
No longer-term impact for the U.S. airlines in particular. Now, around the world, Emirates, actually, the giant airline from Dubai, has said that travel to Africa, not just the stricken regions, but even elsewhere in Africa, has been impacted because just the word Africa right now kind of conjures Ebola in some people's minds. In fact, travel from China, Emirates does a good business carrying people connecting in Dubai between China and Africa. And they said some of that has been impacted even in other regions. But globally, a lot of that demand just shifts elsewhere. Perhaps somebody's afraid to take a trip one place, but they go somewhere else. So if things don't get much worse, then not a lot of impact globally. If things do get worse, if there were to be, more of an outbreak outside those countries, obviously all bets would be off.
Seth, good to see you. Seth Kaplan from Airline Weekly.
Likewise,
thank you very
Phil.
much live for us in Florida on the impact of Ebola on airlines.